Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikki LaRose, and today we're gonna do a flawless foundation routine. But before we get into this look, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my future videos. So there's a lot more that goes into a flawless makeup routine than just the foundation and the powders and the concealers that you're using. It starts with your skin prep, and I can't stress how important that is. So first step in my skin prep is going to be a toner. Today I'll be using the Fat Water Pore Refining Toner Serum from Fenty Beauty. So if you've watched my previous video on how I prep my skin for makeup in the daytime, you'll recognize the steps I'm going to take. I actually switched out products because, like I've mentioned in that video too, I switch out my products all the time. But the whole idea behind the steps that I take to prep my skin always remains the same. So I always start with the toner, and then I'm gonna go straight into a serum. Today I'll be using the Kate Somerville Firming Serum. This is just a great, straightforward, like it says, it's a firming serum. So it's gonna give your skin like that kind of plump but tightened effect. It's also gonna be nice and hydrating, and it's gonna feel lightweight, which is exactly what we need because I don't wanna have anything too thick or too heavy as a skin prep. Okay, so now that our firming serum is on all over, I'm gonna finish it with a moisturizing SPF lotion. This one is from Essence. It's a sun milk and it has SPF 50 in it, which is amazing. And so the reason why I chose this moisturizer with SPF is because it's knocking out two products that I would typically need in one. Skincare for a flawless makeup application is absolutely crucial, but think less is more. Okay, skin is totally prepped now with my serums and my moisturizer, and now I'm gonna talk about primer. Okay, so primer. I don't typically use it on my channel at all. I rarely use it in my kit, if I'm being totally honest. I talk about this all the time. I'm just not like a biggest fan and advocate for primers. I believe that your skin prep, like your moisturizers and your serums and the way you treat your skin prior to your makeup is the ultimate and best primer. But there are cases where primer comes in handy, and they can, when they're utilized correctly, they can be great. So I'm gonna show you two primers that I really love for my skin, and I'm gonna show you two primers that I like for different types of skin. So one of the primers that I do actually enjoy is the Synchro Skin Soft Blurring Primer from Shiseido. The reason why I like this is because it's very thin. It actually almost feels similar to a skin serum or like a very lightweight moisturizer. So it doesn't have that heavy, thick, filmy, typical makeup primer feeling, which I don't like. And I think that's why I don't like primers most of the time. But this one's really nice, and I keep this one in my makeup kit when I just want a little bit of smoothing and a little bit of a blurring effect on my client's skin. And then one that I'll be using today is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Instant Retouch Primer. So this one is great, and the reason why I like this one is for similar reasons as the Shiseido one. It's very lightweight, it's a thinner texture, and it doesn't have that filmy, silicone-y feeling to it. So I'll be using this one, but I'm gonna use a very small amount. So with primers, less is more. Don't think that you need to take a primer and slap it all over your skin, because typically what primers do is they smooth, they blur, and they fill in any like larger pores or like the appearance of fine lines or any kind of texture in your skin. And so when you're looking at your skin, most of us typically just have texture in the center of our face. That's where we have most of our pores. I mean, we have pores all over, but typically our pores are the largest in the center of our face. So that's exactly where I'll be placing this primer. So I'll be dotting it around my nose, basically anywhere that I get oily, which is gonna be my T-zone. That's very common for a lot of people. You know, when your skin gets oily, you typically aren't getting oily around your jaw, and you're not really getting oily like around your temples. You're getting mainly oily around the T-zone. So more to the point that you don't need to use a primer all over your entire face. I just don't think it's necessary, and it can add just an unnecessary layer of product that you don't need. So just keep that in mind when you're using a primer. Less is more, especially when you're applying, you know, your foundation on top and you want it to look flawless. If you have too much primer on, it can pill. Like when you're buffing your foundation on top, you can actually be lifting it up and it could pill on your skin, and that's just such a nightmare to deal with when you're applying your foundation. And you know, B, it's just not necessary. You don't need that much, and that's it. Nice and simple. That's all you need. Before I move on to foundation, I just want to throw in 2 honorable mentions as far as primers go. Like I said, I don't really typically use primers at all in my kit, but I do always keep this one on hand for when I have someone who has larger pores or more texture to their skin or scarring and they want a smoother appearance under their foundation. This is amazing for that. It's also great for oil control. Same with this one. This one feels a little bit lighter in texture. So if you don't want something that's thicker and feeling like the Benefit one, this one's really nice and it feels more lightweight, but it still gives you a beautiful mattifying, blurring effect. So these are great primers. Okay, so one more trick I want to throw in there before I do my foundation, and this is just a great step to take when you want that little extra reassurance that your foundation is going to last all day and look flawless. Take whatever setting spray you're using. I happen to love this one because I love the fine mist that it has. This is the Veil Soft Focus Setting Spray from Hourglass. And what I'm going to do is, before I go in with my foundation, since my skin prep and my primer has dried down to the touch, like my skin isn't wet anymore. And normally when I apply my foundation for every day, I'm typically going for a glowy look. And I like that feeling of putting a foundation on top of more wet skin. This is going to help give me that feeling and that ease when I'm putting my foundation on and blending it on top. It's always better to blend your foundation on top of more of a wet skin than it is dry skin. But since this is a setting spray, it's gonna help to give my skin more grip. So when I put that foundation on, in combination with the primer, it's not gonna be moving at all. It's not gonna budge. So this is a really great tip. And you can see that that mister is so nice and fine. It's not like an aggressive like attack on your face with a sprayer. It's just nice and gentle. So moving on finally to foundation, I'll be using one that you'll probably recognize. I love this foundation. This is the Dior Backstage Face and Body Foundation in the color 2W. The reason why I love this foundation is it's very straightforward. I talk about this all the time. It's just a simple, amazing formula. It's not too heavy on the skin. It's buildable. Initially, it's going to go on as, I think, more of like a light to medium coverage, but you can build it up to be a full coverage. So it's extremely versatile. Okay, so I want to talk about brushes really quick. So when you're looking to get a flawless foundation look, you really want to take into consideration what brushes or tools you're using. So here's an example of a brush that I wouldn't use. And the reason why is because it's too big, it's too fluffy, and you're not gonna have a ton of control when you're using this kind of brush. So instead, what I recommend is something a little bit smaller, and you can see how dense this brush is. Like, this brush is a dense but fluffy brush, if that makes sense. Like, it's packed in there. There's not really any wiggle room in there. It's like a nice packed brush. And so what this is gonna do is it's going to blend my foundation on my skin. It's gonna buff it. It's gonna give me a nice amount of coverage, which is, again, why I chose to do more of a medium coverage, because I'd rather build up a medium coverage than just take a full coverage foundation, slap it on, and get like a flawless finish in that way. This will just look so much more beautiful on the skin in the end. So when I'm first applying this, I'm going to stipple it onto my skin, meaning I'm gonna like tap it on. And really press it onto my skin. And rather than like buffing it all over and being too loose with it, I really want to get that coverage and I want to press it into my skin, because that's what's going to give you more of a flawless finish with your foundation. It takes longer, but your makeup will not budge. And it will look incredibly flawless if you apply it this way. I usually have to go over my nose a couple times, honestly, to make the foundation stick. So I'm gonna lightly layer it over my nose. And just really tap it in. Okay, moving on to concealer. So before I go into my actual concealer that I use daily, I'm gonna use a more pink toned. concealer just to color correct my under eye. And so this one's from Nars. It's the shade Honey. I'll just be using a really small amount of this. This is just to color correct, like I said. And this is a great tip too. If you're someone like me who has any kind of like darker pigmentation or dark circles under their eyes, choose a color that's either on the red side, depending on your skin tone, either on the red side, the orange side, or if you're on the fair side, you would use something that's more peachy or pink toned to cancel out that pigmentation. So I'm gonna let that dry down and kind of self-set. Before I move on to my next concealer, I'm actually gonna go in with my contour products. So for contour slash bronzer, I'll be using a cream concealer. And the reason why I like using a concealer for this type of look, so when I'm trying to get a flawless makeup application, rather than just doing like a cream contour, like a stick or like a bronzing stick or anything that's actually meant to be a contour product, those tend to be a little bit more on the sheer side. But if you're using a concealer in a deeper shade, that's gonna give you coverage and look, ultimately, it's just gonna add to the flawless effect. So great tip. If you want that flawless contoured look, use a concealer. So I'll be using a shade that's a good 2 shades darker than my skin tone. This is the shade Coffee, and this is the Jouer Essential High Coverage Concealer Pen. So before this has a chance to dry down too much, which there's actually a lot of playtime with these concealers, which I love. So I have some time to really go in there and blend it out before it gets too dry on my skin. So we'll be working in layers to achieve the amount of contour slash bronzer that I want to get. So another tip, rather than just applying a ton of this darker concealer and then just trying to tap it in and blend it on, I'm going to work in thinner layers. So the effect is going to be just a lot more flawless and less clockable. So meaning you're not going to see it just sitting on top of your skin. We're going to work in thin layers so those layers have a chance to really settle and become more like seamless rather than just, you know, a whole bunch of products sitting on top of your skin and kind of hoping that it's going to look, you know, more flawless when you set it with powder and like less makeup-y. It's just a better technique. If you're watching this and you know you're gonna be photographed or you're gonna be in video, make sure you put foundation on your ears. So I'm not going to because I just don't need to, obviously. But if you are really ultimately going for like that flawless makeup look, not only would you need to blend it down your neck, which you saw I did do that, you would also need to take it onto your ears. So just food for thought. Okay, so I'm gonna go in with another layer of this concealer to get a little more color. I'm gonna go in now and do my nose. Going back to our second layer of contour slash cream bronzer. This time I'm really gonna just press this one in because this layer I want to stand out a little more than my first layer. And I love using like a smaller fluffy brush like this one. This is great for so many different cream products, liquid products, powders. Like I love these brushes. I have so many of these. It's just a Real Techniques brush. You can get them at the drugstore. They're amazing. I'm gonna go along my jawline one more time just to make sure it's blended. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to our last concealer under the eye. This one's going to be from Jouer again. This is the Essential High Coverage Concealer in a liquid form. This is in the color Wheat. And since this is my product, I'm gonna go right in with the applicator. Now with this concealer, I'm going to lightly line it up on the side of my nose. And what this is gonna do is, obviously it's gonna help to brighten this area that's typically pretty dark, and we have a lot of shadows in this area because of our nose and because of our eyelids. But it's also going to help to enhance that contour that I placed before. And I'm gonna take a little bit more. I'm gonna highlight just the very top of my chin. And notice where I'm putting this, it's really at the very top of my chin. Like it's not further down. So if I brought it further down, it actually make my chin look longer. And so I'm really just trying to give my chin a little lift up. Same idea when I'm doing my nose highlight. So I'm gonna get the very tip of my nose. Instead of bringing it like all the way down here, which would elongate my nose, by keeping it further up, it's gonna give the tip of my nose a little lift up. I'm just gonna connect that line. And then we're gonna do an upside down triangle in the center, right in between our brows. I'm just gonna feather out the edges. By feathering out the edges of wherever you're highlighting, it's gonna make it easier when you go in and blend it out. And then I don't really like to highlight my Cupid's bow or like above my lip. Just for the sake of this video, I'm gonna show you how to do that. Okay, so to start the blending process for my concealer, I'm gonna be taking more of a dense, thick brush. This one's great for like setting your under eye with powder. It's great for packing on a concealer. In this case, I'm gonna use this to tap in my concealer and to start to very lightly blend it before I go in with another coat of it. And it's the same exact principle that we had with, you know, pressing and really stippling in that foundation. It's the exact same idea. So when you want a flawless foundation look, a flawless makeup look, you want to press in all of your products, not just your foundation. You want to use that technique for, just like I showed you with the cream bronzer or this darker concealer that I used. I really press that product in to maintain the coverage, and also just to, it's almost like securing it on your skin. Like you're pressing it on and like you're securing it into place. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in with a small makeup sponge. This one's from e.l.f. Cosmetics. I bought this for my drugstore makeup look. This sponge is amazing. So this is damp, and what that's gonna do is help to really work that product into your skin. Another reason why I love this concealer from Jouer is it has a very smoothing and blurring effect to it. So the combination of this with the techniques I'm showing you guys and like the way I'm layering the makeup, it just gives that really flawless finish. So in all honesty, if you're going for this kind of makeup look, I would highly suggest using a concealer that is more like thick and blurring like that Jouer one, because it lets you use something that's more on like the super wet or like really moisturizing side. It's not gonna give you the same effect. Like this is gonna give you a blurring, beautiful effect to your skin. So now taking the tip of my beauty sponge, I'm going to buff out any creases that might have happened under my eye. And now I'm going to take the same tip, I'm going to blend my highlight on my nose. Just by tapping it. Moving on to powder. So we're done with our liquids and our creams. Now we're gonna start to set our makeup for a flawless finish. And you cannot have a flawless makeup look without powder. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. If you don't like powder, I get it. Not many people like the way powder looks on and feels on their skin, but powder is crucial to your makeup looking flawless. So one of my favorites is the One Size Beauty translucent powder. This powder, it's not just like a basic loose setting powder. This powder actually does blur your skin. And when I first tried it, I was like blown away. It looks so flawless on your skin. It looks so beautiful, especially under the eye. I love this powder under the eye. I'm actually almost out of this powder, so I need to go refill this. But anyway, for that flawless finish, you want to actually look for powders and take into consideration what formulas you're choosing for setting your makeup. If you want a flawless look, try to look for powders that say things like blurring or HD. Those are going to give your skin a smooth effect. I'm going to take a little bit of that powder on my sponge. I'm just going to take sheer layers first. I'm going to blend it, and then I'm going to layer it. And I have to look way up for this. And I want to point out one more time, I'm not like buffing it. I'm not like dragging it all over the place. I'm tapping it and I'm pressing it into my skin. So not to just repeat myself over and over again, but you just have to really utilize like these techniques that I'm showing you if you want a really flawless makeup look that lasts all day. You want to really press all of your products into your skin. So now you can see the difference between this eye and this eye. Moving on to the next side. So now I'm going to go with a little bit more powder, and I'm going to bake the sides of my nose, and for two reasons. This is going to help to bring out that contour that we placed earlier and really like enhance it. And it's also going to help with oil control throughout the day. And once you dust it off, it just gives you like a really like natural, snatched look on your nose. And then whatever's left over on my sponge, I'm gonna press it into my smile lines. And I say whatever's left over because I don't want a heavy amount of powder in this area of my mouth, because if you have too much powder around your mouth, it can tend to look really cakey. And I'm gonna go back in and take a little more of that powder. I'm going to bake and set my chin highlight. And then taking more, we're going to set the center of our forehead. And I'm going to leave the rest of this bare, and I'm gonna set it with a different powder in a second. And then to bring out my cheekbones even more, even though we did contour with that darker concealer, I'm gonna bake lightly underneath my cheekbones to really bring out that contour. And this is a great tip too. Like, let's say when you're doing your cream contour or your bronzer and you were applying it and blending it, but you blended it down too far. This is a great technique and trick to use to help to re-brighten that area, if that makes sense, and to cancel out wherever you place that cream contour. If it's too low, it's gonna help to cancel that out and brighten that area and just kind of fix the problem. It's a great trick. I'm gonna take a little bit more and highlight towards my temple. So to dust off my baking powder, I'm actually gonna use another loose powder. This one is from Makeup Forever. It's the Ultra HD Loose Setting Powder. This has no color to it. Now I wanna point something out. This is probably the only time that you're gonna see me buffing any product on my skin. And for this product in particular, you do not need to be heavy-handed with it. Less is more. You don't want any kind of crazy flashback. This is definitely not the powder you wanna use to bake with. Ever. Don't ever bake with this powder. You will look like Casper. And you also don't want to like pack it on because you don't want this powder to be unblended in any way. You want this powder to be blended all across your skin. That way there's no risk of having any flashback with this powder. So just dusting all that off. And now we are going to go in and we're going to set our cream contour with a powder bronzer. Using the same brush, I'll be using the Glowish by Huda Beauty. This is their bronzer in medium. So same brush, which is totally fine. I'm going to press this where our cream contour is. So avoiding that center where I have the highlighter and really making sure that I get the very top of my forehead as close to my hairline as possible. And buff this out towards my ears so they're not as light compared to the rest of my face. One of our last steps for our flawless makeup tutorial is going to be bringing in a little more luminosity to our skin. Since the rest of our face is, it's very smooth, it's very matte. It doesn't have a lot of like glow to it. So we're gonna bring back a little bit of glow, but in a subtle way, in a very subtle, flawless way. And this powder is just, it's like airbrush, filter, and a powder. Okay, so this palette is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting. So this is the original Hourglass Ambient Lighting palette. So I'll be taking a smaller fluffy brush and I'm gonna just kind of, from what's left, I'm gonna dip into these two shades here. I'm gonna bring it around my temple, just give my temple a little highlight and glow, which I think is really pretty, especially like, when people see your profile. It's nice to have like a little healthy glow around your temple and kind of have a way to connect your cheek highlight to something so it's not disconnected. Anyway, taking the darker shade now, same brush, I'm gonna use this to get the very highest point of my forehead. So now I'm going to pinch my brush. I'm taking the two lightest shades and I'm going to highlight the bridge of my nose. And then the tip. And then our last and final step is going to be setting our flawless makeup application with the Veil Soft Focus Setting Spray from Hourglass, the one we used previously to dampen our skin before we put our foundation on. So here's the finished look. This is my flawless foundation routine. If you like this video, you can check out more right here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
And a zinger. Yeah, nice. Here we go. And one more time. And Nice.